Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the TEDx event today. My name is Erico. Well, there's actually something funny about this opening. Our dear host, Addy, at the backstage told me to change it because the word greeting, he believes, is too formal. And most of all, he believes that I took his job. But anyways, the theme of today's TEDx talk is Dare to Change, so why not stay with it? Before we start, imagine that you have traveled back in time 8,000 years ago. Imagine if you were still using shells as money, horses as ways of getting around, or even steam to power up your daily routines. That might sound pretty wild to everyone sitting here, right? However, the wildness was the norm for us thousands of years ago. So how come we now believe that it was wild? The answer is to change. To be more specific, daring to change. According to the Oxford Languages, change means to replace something with something else, especially the something of the same kind is newer or better. So what does it mean for us to dare to change? Let's travel back in time to the very first existence of the human being to find out the answer. About 12,000 years ago, we humans have transitioned from the Paleolithic to the Neolithic era, a transition from stone to bronze. And about 3,200 years ago, we humans have switched from bronze to iron. We humans have paid much risk, time, and effort from changing from stone tools to iron tools. However, if we didn't choose to do so, we might stay in a specific age, for instance, the Stone Age forever, because, we ain't doing stuff. The risk-taking here was worthy. With iron tools, we are allowed to farm more accessibly and more efficiently. Also, later on in the Industrial Revolution, iron is a major material that we use to build factories and the machines inside of it. Another meaningful change that has occurred in the human history is switching from steam engines to electricity. In the 17th century, the very first steam engine was invented by this dude called Thomas Newcomer. However, it was intended to be used as a water pump. Thomas has never realized that he has changed the world's ways of powering since then. He also didn't realize that he has lost a chance to make billions of dollars, a lot of money, unlike James Watt did, because he started a company. Also, he didn't realize that he has lost a chance to name my favorite TV show, Thomas the Tank Engine. Sorry. Later on, a person called James Watt, as I mentioned before, enhanced the system of steam engines, and it was allowed to use in locomotives and steamboats. Life back then was already good enough. However, we humans still decided to change. In the 17th century, Benjamin Franklin, also the dude on the US dollar bill, has conducted the famous kite experiments. Benjamin Franklin risked his life to do so, for he understood the risk at the beginning of it. Obviously, his risk-taking was worthy from the perspective of the whole human society. The electricity that he has discovered has changed the lighting, cooling, heating, refrigeration, and has boosted the economy of the modern society. That was a steep step and a rather bold decision. Without switching to electricity, our life today might be like this. Which means that we will never be able to use computers nor phones. That means we will never be able to use TikTok, no Instagram, no WeChat, no Bilibili, no YouTube, and no etc. Imagine you guys sitting here today listening to crazy scientists telling you about a brand new kind of energy that is generated by, well, let's say, toothpaste that could be 10 times more efficient than electricity. The mad scientists are also yelling at you, shouting and running into your home and forcing you to change your electricity bulbs into those toothpaste-powered bulbs. That might sound totally crazy to everyone sitting here today. However, people back then viewed electricity and steam as that. Those are two brand new kinds of energy to them, and they knew nothing about it. It took courage and time for people to accept them and to use them in their daily routines. And that is the part that made us humankind great. We humans are not afraid to change our lifestyle and technology to embrace the better future. Other than science, we humans have made considerable changes in how we viewed each other. Let's begin with the most significant change that has been made, the racial equality. 120 years ago, racial discrimination was very common. And in 1954, the civil rights movement has started. Well, I will use an example from one of the most famous leaders of this event, Martin Luther King Jr., to better explain my points. Everyone here probably knew his famous speech, "I Have a Dream," for it is one of the most impactful speeches ever and has influenced millions of people. Martin Luther King was a leader of the civil rights movement. He organized several peaceful protests as the head of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, including the March on Washington in 1963. Undoubtedly, King has made considerable changes in how people viewed each other. However, at the same time of being a hero, Martin Luther King also faced great risk. On April 4th, 1968, Martin Luther King, unfortunately, was shot. Moreover, he knew his risk at the beginning when he started to lead the civil rights movement. And here's a quote he has made. "If physical death is the price that I must pay to free my white brothers and sisters from a permanent death of spirit, then nothing could be more redemptive." Even knowing everything that might happen to him, King still chose to fight for the civil rights movement. And this example here, ladies and gentlemen, is called Daring to Change. The next part of my speech will be about how economy has changed throughout history. In the ancient times, we humans began as a barter system, meaning that we change one thing for another. Well, let's say you want to change your phone with this cow. Yeah. However, we soon found out it was inconvenient because we don't have a system of measuring the value of objects. So we have switched to use currency. The oldest money ever found was shell money. Parts of Mesopotamia and Egypt used golden bars. Well, people back then will view these two things like, oh my God, there's so many shells. I can buy so many stuff, like cows or phones. But it was still inconvenience because people back then either need to count them or weight them. So we've switched to the manufacture of metal coins. We wouldn't need to weight them. Instead, we just pay them. However, we still found it was inconvenient. So in the 1950s, we invented a thing called credit card. In the 1990s, we invented the e-payment. And in 2009, a significant change has occurred. A person named Satoshi Nakamoto has created the Bitcoin. And it has held a significant impact on the economy. Bitcoins won't require a bank account for transacting. It only takes a few minutes to transfer from one user to another. It has created an alternative way of internet payment. Bitcoins have considerably changed the world. In 2014, NFT, the non-fungible token, was created. And in 2022, it has become a trend to buy NFT artworks. NFT artworks is a form of art that people back then couldn't imagine. It has changed the technology of human, the economy of human, and the art history of human. It allowed people to trade art pieces over the internet. Let's say you want to buy the Mona Lisa, but you obviously don't have $1 billion for it. However, if the official owner released 1 out of 128 pieces of the Mona Lisa on the internet, then you can own a proven version of it, and you can still sell it on marketplaces. That is not doable in real life. You can't slice a painting into 128 pieces and even making sure what you're buying is real. However, with blockchain, you have the proof of this through code. And Bitcoins, using advantages mentioned in the previous slides, has enhanced the development of the NFTs. As you can see here, the development of the economy is elaborating. We use and create new developments based on the old things we have created. We use them to enhance new technologies and economy. Ladies and gentlemen, We humans have switched from stone to iron in the aspects of technology, and from steam to electricity, and from bias to almost racial equality in the aspects of society, and from shell money to non-fungible tokens in the aspects of economy. We've made pretty wild changes, as you can see here. This is what our ancestors couldn't imagine. However, they managed to do it because they are daring, and of course, they have changed. And I believe in the future, the society wouldn't be imaginable by us. After listening to my speech, I believe you all now have an answer to the question, what is change? So back to the central question, what does it mean for us to dare to change? Well, for me, change means improvement under this contention. The cases that I have mentioned above have all changed in my definition, improved people's thoughts towards the world and the society. Those leaders and those participants of the events are all daring to say no to the majority. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of my speech. Thank you.